Hi, my name's Tony Saunders.
And I'm Helen Savor.
This is the show where we get the scoop on new third-party materials, supplements on Pathfinder Infinite. Welcome to Infinite Reviews with your Infinite Insiders.
And today we're here with Jamie Trollope. And we're talking about the NPC Index Firebrands and the Thriae. Oh God, we already talked about how to pronounce this thing.
We debated it, right?
Beyond Ancestries.
Yeah, there's no consensus.
How about you guys in the
it's
chat tell us how to pronounce it? I'm sorry.
So Beyond Ancestries 3i is
Yes.
how I've been referencing it myself.
3i. Dig it.
We'll do it. But first,
Hey guys, nice to be here.
yes. Thank
Please,
you.
yeah. So you did you do a show with Justin with Dustin originally for Infinite Reviews?
Yes, yeah, that was one of the NPC Index books.
Yep.
It would have been Warriors, probably the first one.
Yeah, I think maybe you touched Smoke and Sail too, but I'm not sure. I want to say
you're right, actually,
yeah.
I want to say Smoke and Sail because I remember that was the first time I saw that book. But this is your first time with us.
That's right. In this context.
That's right.
Yes.
In this context. We were talking a little bit before stream, so Helen and Jamie and I were all on the Omens Plus run for Lost Omens. It was a lot of fun to work all together, so it's cool to be back.
Good times.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about these, and actually wanted to talk about some of your other collaborators because on your NPC Index line, you work with Paul Steen, and I'm kind of curious, how did that partnership get started?
So Paul, I've known Paul since around 2016 now, but originally Paul was running an online game of Iron Gods, played by posts on the Paizo forums, and I applied for that game as a player, and that's where we first came across each other. And then he started talking about doing a Skull and Shackles 2nd edition conversion once we pivoted over to 2e, but we wanted something a bit more kind of robust with the piracy and the ship combat stuff, and that's where Smoke and Sail came from. So we collaborated really closely on that, just to write it as basically homebrew rules for that game, just for us to use in that game, but it sort of grew into its own thing, and then ultimately became our first release. And then since then, Paul and I have worked together, and it tends to be that Paul has got an excellent eye for detail that I simply don't. So he's a brilliant editor and proofreader, and he does all the Foundry stuff for my releases as well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Great partnership.
It's so honestly so helpful. Yeah, he's great to work with.
So I think, so first of all, I really like how we're not shying away from the pirates and guns with this one either, right? There's definitely a presence on the cover.
Yep.
We're making it known. Not surprising to see you flexed pretty hard with Smoke and Sails before, so I definitely knew that you were gonna take hands to Firebrands when we were tasked with being Infinite Masters.
Absolutely.
I was waiting to see how you'd flex. You flexed in a lot of different ways. So I guess can we see? Let's just dive into a few of the gang of the new options for GMs.
Well, I mean, so NPC Index Firebrands is, it's obviously kind of part of the NPC Index line, but sort of supplementary to the main books in that line. But it came about because of the work that I was doing with you, Tony, on Firebrands Plus, because there was so much really good collaboration on that project, so much conversation about the different options we were going to put into that book, that I thought, well, the Firebrands as an organization and in the world of Galarian is so rich, and the options that we were coming up with in Firebrands Plus were so cool. I was like, well, I really want to see these fleshed out as NPCs so that they appear in other people's games. And that's where it came from, really, is a little bit of a companion piece to Firebrands Plus, and then a companion piece to the NPC Index line itself as well. And really it's because the thing that I love more than anything about this game is telling stories together, having interesting interactions in the world with NPCs, and just making it feel rich and real and engaging. And that's where this one came from, really, because it moves away from, although there are a lot of different stat blocks in there and people that you can just pick up and put in your game, either as an ally to your party or as an enemy. But there's also some lore around them and some sort of tips on how to play them as a GM, personality traits and that sort of thing, which, again, it all just works to make them real.
Real is definitely the exact word I would use to describe. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the NPC Index line in particular, it's almost like when you unwrap it and you really get down to the options that are dropped in here, they're so much more than just being like a stat block you can throw at a player. Like,
yes.
I hate to jump a little ahead, but like even just in the first opening lines with the drowned captain, you learn that Captain Kaida was once a fearless leader captain of the Silver Ravens, which is a deep cut already, because the Silver Ravens are a really cool organization of Firebrands. And to kind of like, you almost build this whole narrative with the individual character just right out of the gate with the stat block, that I not only feel like with Firebrands plus introducing those new options, sure, but like you've really kind of brought the other half of it for the GM at the table. And one thing about this book that I think is really cool is that because Firebrands plays so well into like, a freedom fighter or a pirate campaign, the fact that you can have a random ensemble option to just bring into the story, and like the drowned captain, like Captain Kaida, he could just go up one day, right? Like, that's, or her, she could just like roll into the beach or like get you at sea, and then that's like the whole that's just a moment where she can be this recurring character in your narrative, and you can just plug that right in. Or if you need a captain or something with this, drowned captain vibe, you could definitely use her.
Exactly. One of the things that I like to do, I like to produce options for GMs that help them tell stories, help them run their game smoothly. And with this, it's a toolbox, really, and you can just go in and use whichever tools you want. So if you want just a stat block of an interesting kind of enemy captain that you're going to come up against, then just drop in the level 7 Captain Kaida, or if you want to make this a recurring NPC, whether an ally or a villain, then there's a bit more sort of meat on bones for you to be able to do that. You can lean into the lore that's provided here. You can use it as a jumping off point. You can look at just the personality traits and think, okay, well, how do I want to play this to make it engaging for my players? You can use the plot hooks as just like introductory adventures to this NPC. There's a lot of different things in here, but the ethos that I had with this design for this one was to take it a little step further than just the NPC index line, which is just a bestiary and really useful in and of itself, but there's a little bit more to this one if you want it to be.
Not gonna lie, this was kind of, it's like, Jamie's got that whole NPC index line, which is bestiaries. I wonder if we could come up with something with a little bit more meat to it. Oh, Jamie's figured it out too. Okay, well, there, he's got it. Awesome job. This is exactly what I think GMs are just gonna love this. They probably do already. It's already, what is this hit already? Like, is this Electrum yet, or is this only silver so far? I forget.
I think it might be silver.
Only.
I'm really pleased with how this has gone.
You got golds on how many? Like at least 2 now?
The NPC index line is getting gold on most of them. And I think that's, that, I know we're not talking about that specifically, but it does show that the support for GMs is a market in Infinite that, there's life there. There is a market for producing GM-facing supplements. I mean, with this one as well, just you just reminded me there of, if I had written this after the remaster stuff had started being talked about, I would have included edicts and anathema for these NPCs, and that's one of the things I've got on my list to go back and just make a slight revision and errata to release them that way, because I think the game is, with the remaster, is going to structure itself, in that way to help GMs make engaging NPCs, and this will be another tool to be able to do that.
That's actually I'd bet dollars to donuts you're right, Jamie. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see edicts and anathemas basically appended to probably, I would say, most creatures. Like that might be what they do. So that's a pretty
just those are the guide rails now, probably.
Yeah,
I think
that makes
so.
a lot of sense.
I think so. I think it just makes NPCs more engaging, because they're not just cardboard cutouts, they're not just stereotypes. You can have two different kind of lawful evil, we're moving away from alignment, but two different lawful evil characters that have very different motivations, and I think that it really helps in that.
I know you're not there on edicts, but at least you've shown that you can get different sides of these people with looking for each of the concepts, the ally and the enemy perspectives. You fit a lot in a little bit of space with these, like flip a coin, how you can do both sides of the thing. So you're already in the right headspace, I think, to figure this stuff out.
I think so. I hope so. I mean, with the plot hooks, that's what I wanted to do, is to have here is an idea for an adventure that you can have, or an encounter that you could have featuring this NPC. Now, is the NPC an ally of the party, or are they an enemy? Are they in a kind of grey in-between space where they could be one or the other? And then there's some guidance then on how you might play out this encounter depending on the relationship that's been established with the NPC. I just think things like that are going to ultimately help GMs to tell an engaging story. I know I've said that already, but that really is where it comes down to with this. You've got the mechanics of the stat block that you can just pick up and use, and then you've got all of this other stuff that is going to just make it much more interesting.
I mean, to be fair, though, I will say that the mechanics in a lot of these cases do seem to kind of inform the story. Like, even, like when I was looking at, Captain Kaida, like she in her early infancy, like with her infancy, 7, but when she's at 13, she's got ghost ship, right? So as a GM, I see like Kaida's whole journey, irrespective of the players, kind of in that moment, and knowing where she's headed with her narrative. At the end, I almost feel like it's easier to tell the beginning too. Because then I can kind of see, like, from my perspective as a GM, okay, here's an opportunity where I can bring this NPC back at a later stage of the game. How would I use her in the beginning of the game, knowing that I have that opportunity later? That they don't all have to conform that way, obviously, but you definitely gave, some options. Like even with Zara, the mercenary, right? Like Zara has 4 intervals, right? So 1, 4, 7, and 10, and that leaves so much options in the early game. And then I guess as a GM, you kind of have this idea, like, okay, so like the first half of the game, Zara can make like a real impact, right? Like in the story, but like maybe they're not the right character or NPC to use in the second half of the game. So it already informs me kind of where I can use it. So
really, and if you want to see the NPC grow in the story along with your PCs, then there's ways that happens, that evolution happens within the stat blocks. Zara looks very different at level 1 than they do at level 10, and how is that reflected in the story that you want to tell? So I think one of the things for me as a designer is the mechanics should always underpin the story. The story is the key thing. Absolutely. And the mechanics enable that rather than constrain it.
I mean, you succeeded. I think.
Oh, thank you.
These are very. They feel very full, right? Like
a lot of space.
Like there's no shortage of the fill in, right? Like it's a full entree even at the earlier stages of the game. So.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I really wanted to go for, is let's give GM something that's really cool.
Yeah. These 8 NPCs are pretty jam packed. I'm just kind of scrolling through.
I had to get the
show
fashionista in there.
Exactly. I wanted to get to our fashionista.
Yeah.
One of my favorites in there.
Oh my
Oh,
god!
by the way,
Where did this artwork
Fontaine.
come from?
I have
from-
a player playing a fashionista right now. I was gonna tell you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really like validating as a creator. Somebody's actually using your stuff, and
Yeah.
I love
I'm loving it, by the way.
Oh, awesome. I love it. I really enjoyed writing the fashionista, and then you know, the NPC version, Valeria Fontaine. I just had such fun with her, and I could have just written a whole narrative around her. Really.
Are you gonna write some fiction?
I was gonna say I can't rule it out.
We need some. You need to break into fiction.
Wait a minute. No, I have a bone to pick with you, Jamie. What is this? What is it? Blood in the Cloth? That's a brilliant name of an ability that isn't in Firebrands Plus. You held out on us.
I had to keep
love
something in
it.
my back pocket, you know.
You did. You really did. I love the name. That's really
nice.
clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
Some great stuff in
That's one of my favorite ones in this book, I think.
Yeah, keep an eye on her.
And again, she looks very different across the different levels.
Oh, yeah.
The plot hooks with her, I think, are really fun because they really lean into the idea of fashion in the world, and you know, one of the plot hooks is called Rebellion by Design. Valeria's fashion designs have inspired a rebellion against an oppressive regime, and the players are drawn into the conflict and must decide where their loyalties lie. I think, you know, you could. That could be a single encounter. It could be an entire subplot. And again, are you an ally of Valeria in this context? Are you one of her enemies? So that's the sort of thing that I wanted to do, is have interesting NPCs, solid stat blocks that if you just wanted to present them as an enemy, that's great. They can do that. But there's more to it as well.
Yeah, I think the only flaw with creating all of these different levels for these NPCs is it means that I don't want them to die as a GM, like, ever. Yeah. Like, I'm going to be like, it's like, how do they escape from this? I was like, have to save my NPC from players at all costs.
The cunning
just in case.
Escape, just at the last minute.
Right.
They only passed out.
Exactly,
I guess I'm lucky.
You
they don't usually kill
as
a lot
invested
of
in your
NPCs
NPCs as your PCs, then I don't know. Does that mean if something's going right or going wrong? I don't know.
Oh my goodness. I mean, okay, as a fiction writer, it's different, but you know, like, I swore in Vellum and Lace, I'd do a throwaway NPC for one episode, and I wanted them to come back for each episode. It was getting stupid. I'm like, you would just be for one, and they'd come back again and again and again. So yeah, you know, it happens. Mirror duplicates. Yeah, there you go, Brian. That's how you fix it.
Yep, mirror duplicates. Or if you were feeling really froggy, you could just try to merge the stat blocks of Valeria and Kaida. If Valeria died at sea, and then just make Valeria a drowned captain. Real quick.
Exactly. So one of the NPCs in here, Solomon, the voice of the sea, is he's based on one of the options from Firebrands Plus, the Shanty Bard.
Nice.
He is now a key NPC in our Skull and Shackles 2E conversion.
Nice.
He's part of the crew. So he lives in that game now.
Yeah, NPCs can be part of the team. I love it. He's a cool guy.
Yeah. I mean, and it always feels a little bit more, I don't know, like when it's chosen family, because I've had games where, like, as a GM and like you send an NPC along because you feel like the players need them or it's imperative to the plot or something, but like it's always cool when like the players really embrace that and it makes sense. I mean, Solomon, you know, pretty charming, right? So like easy to fall in love with. Everybody likes a good beat while on a boat, not much else to do but dance and sing, right? So
exactly. And his backstory is around a crew that he was part of being enraptured by siren calls and sort of the sort of, and then being lost at sea. And so there's a backstory that you can work into your own games with that, you know, and he's got abilities that sort of that come from that story. One of his reactions is called Resist the Siren's Call, that
I like this sweet
you know, grants him additional abilities against mental control and that sort of thing. So again, it's all about kind of mechanics and story working together rather than feeling out of place.
And I love that his description that Solomon's very like down for anything, like unpredictable, you know, like shrewd and unpredictable, skilled negotiator, boisterous, like pretty much let's throw like
he's a wild card for sure.
Wild card, yep, definitely.
I don't know if you want to go through the rest of these, but I think we kind of got the spirit of the stuff that you've been working on here, and we actually still have a second book to go over, so
we do. I want Jamie to do the impossible though. Before we leave.
Okay.
Jamie, you got to pick a favorite.
Oh,
you gotta of this book, like who's
your favorite?
Was your favorite?
Pick your favorite baby.
That is really tough. I think the two though, because I you know, I can't. It's like picking between your children, right? It's just impossible.
Yeah,
but I think the two are Valeria, the fashionista, and Sebastian Wildfire Lockhart, the celebrity.
Okay.
Ooh. Let's take a peek at Sebastian just before we dip out. Just one little, just a quick.
I mean, incredible artwork provided by Paizo.
I was gonna kind of say like
so
that is some
beautiful.
What?
Like
okay,
gold
where did this one come from? Yes.
Is definitely their color. Like that is.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
I mean, celebrity, right?
Yeah, fair. Like absolutely. You know, like that makes sense.
Yeah. I really enjoyed writing Sebastian as well. I love the idea of he's a celebrity adventurer. He's a celebrity kind of a firebrand if you want him to be part of the Firebrands, but he's very well known, and then his plot hooks kind of revolve around that. Like he's got a rival celebrity who has challenged him to this great race through an infamous dungeon. And you can either be part of his team going through that dungeon, or you can work against him and try and kind of stunt his progress going through. Another one of the plot hooks is that one of his kind of most loyal fans has been kidnapped. I really enjoyed those two. I think that they were both very fun to write, both from a sort of mechanic standpoint, writing things like for Sebastian, like big debut. Was a cool ability to write for him. I really liked those two. I think they were the ones I had most fun writing, I think.
I think the plot hooks definitely. I'm not gonna lie, the idea of there being like some kind of Zoolander rivalry that led to the Great Race. Yes. That's great. That's really
exactly good. The vibe that I was going for with him, I think.
That is great.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good fun. There's some interesting characters in there.
The ally enemy is a nice touch for all the plot hooks, by the way. I know you mentioned that before, but I do think that it, you know, giving that at least enough of a dichotomy of directions it could go. Like GMs can probably fill in the blanks for middle ground, if you will, but for the most part,
exactly.
Like I like that little hint of guidance. It definitely makes it a little bit easier to run.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, you're presented with this situation with the plot hook, and then are you an ally or are you an enemy? Here are some of the things that you might want to consider when running that plot hook, depending on your relationship. I think that's quite important because, you know, often NPCs are presented as one or the other, and then there's a lot of work for the GM to kind of retrofit that into their game. But what I was trying to do is, again, I go back to that analogy of here's a toolbox, dip in and use what you need for your game, you know?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna...
Sorry, Helen, I distracted us.
No, it's not a distraction. It's not. This is all good
keeping us
stuff.
on topic.
Nah, that's no fun. I'm just making sure I'm doing the tech right, quite frankly. I'm usually so afraid to touch the layout live, and yep, there we go. Okay.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, take a look at this cover. Jamie has been upping his layout game with each and every one, and I think we're going to talk about that very quickly. Maybe we even lead off with that.
Yeah, like, I mean, this entire cover is a little bit like, I mean, it is
I'm going to
very
scroll
much
down
a
so you
flex.
can see this.
I'm stuck on the Beyond and Ancestries.
I just want to make sure you can see that too.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, I couldn't even get that far, Helen. I was trapped at the top.
So Beyond is going to be my other main line of products, really. So I've got the NPC Index, which speaks for itself, and then Beyond is going to be mainly player focused project. So there'll be, Beyond Ancestries, and there'll be Beyond Archetypes, beyond whatever, beyond classes, whichever way I want to go with it, beyond items. And it's sort of, that'll be the other kind of main line of products that I have then. But in terms of the layout for this one, I really enjoy layout. We had a little discussion about this before we went live. I know some people really hate it. I really enjoy it. I think the design element is something that I get a lot of kind of satisfaction from when things line up just right. And the sort of colors are complementary and all of that sort of thing. But with this one in particular, what I wanted to do is the visual design, I wanted to really support the themes of what was being discussed in the book. So the Thriae are, they're obviously kind of anthropomorphic bee people, so that really lent itself to the colors that were used. The sort of night sky on the cover relates to the fact that they're well renowned as seers. So it all just plays into this visual language of kind of reinforcing what the ancestry is about, and I try and carry that through in the design in the interior as well anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's very successful. I mean, even the Beyond Ancestries, that's a honeycomb. Like it's a widened honeycomb to surround, which is a very, I don't know what font that is, but I'm pretty much in love with it. And then the honeycomb bottom on the cover, gorgeous as well.
Thank you. The colors is something that I struggle with. I'm colorblind, so I'm always asking my partner, Kath,
Same.
Are these?
No, we both were.
I would not have told. I could not have told that from how you do these things.
I would not have known that either. So impressive.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I promised that I would. This is amazing. So just how good of the layout this is. Like this, I show stopped for a second. That is a. If you were lean in, folks, that is a honeycomb, like horizontal rule, right there. That is what we call a flex. That is amazing. It is one of the coolest design elements I've ever seen for a book.
Oh, thank you so much.
I love it. I mean, talk about jazzing up your page right out of the gate with something like that, setting the tone. Like, I thought that was. I see why you like layout. It's very.
I do. I really enjoy it. I mean, just to kind of talk about that for a second, right? So that serves a purpose. I'm a big believer in. So my day job is around kind of user research and design for products and online services and that sort of thing. And I'm always a believer in nothing should be on a page that doesn't belong to be that doesn't belong there, that doesn't have a function, doesn't have a purpose. And so that honeycomb is, it separates the page out to help with the kind of sort of ease of visualization of the sidebar, so you can just kind of, your eye is taken across into the sidebar, there's more information over here. Again, it reinforces the visual language of honeycomb. Maybe that's a bit obvious given the subject matter, but I just wanted it to just be constantly reinforced with it. I really enjoy layout. I think it's like I said, I find it very satisfying.
It's I don't want to. Deceptively simple is the wrong thing to tell, but it's just it fits, but it fades away. It's not distracting, but it's the theme. It resonates so well with this. I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really pleased with how this one came out.
Everything, even the size. We even get into like you're doing it right here. Yeah, all the way through. I'm gonna kind of skip us to a little bit, unless you guys want to talk. I was thinking about getting closer to the feats, unless you guys want to focus on some of these things.
No, I'm sure.
Okay.
I was going to say, I'm sure people aren't that interested in us. Just
no, but you did it. It's
design.
really on point.
It is. I guess for some of we get a lot of viewers that are creators themselves. So
yeah,
doing it right, folks. That's all we're trying to say. All right, so some of the juice. So why? See, I'm gonna get it wrong.
Hold on.
Thriae.
Thriae.
Yeah.
Well, if it's any
right
consolation,
now.
I don't really know how to pronounce it either. So Thriae was a 1E ancestry initially. I think from Beastry 3 or 4. So I really enjoy kind of anthropomorphized ancestries generally. I think they're really fun. I think you can lean into the theme of a creature that they're derived from. And with the Thriae, the description and the sort of lore that existed around them is this, communal hive structure, caste-based system of society that was just really interesting to me. So what I wanted to do is to flesh that out with mechanics in the feats that both spoke to the creature that they're derived from, but also the society that they come from as well. So there's these different castes that have that are kind of predetermined for you which one you're gonna come into, and then I was asking myself questions around like, well, what sorts of things would they be able to do, both individually and in sort of service to the hive? And it always comes back to that societal question. So I just really thought that it was an interesting space to explore. I thought that there was good design space there for cool abilities. And I really like bees. What can I say?
Bees are very cool. No shame. They live to be 200 years old.
Are you kidding?
Did not realize that.
Blows my mind.
Do you think they transition into different roles over the course of their bee lives?
Maybe. I mean, that's one of the things, right? Is they're this sort of communal society that is very caste-based and is less individualistic. But what does that mean for somebody who's going to become an adventurer? How do they reconcile that? I think there's interesting kind of backstories that can be told around that sort of thing.
Yep, definitely.
I'm going to scroll up a sec.
Excommunicated from the hive or something like that, for sure.
There's a sidebar on that exact thing. So one of the things I wanted to do with this is to flesh out the society and the kind of, I wanted to make it feel like an ancestry that could have been put out by Paizo. And what I mean by that is, like, that's not a flex. I just mean I wanted it to feel as grounded in the world as some of the other ancestries and have a sort of rich heritage. And so one of the sidebars is around crime and punishment, and it talks about the fact that you can be ostracized from the hive for really serious crimes, but they never kind of put somebody to death. They never use the death penalty because there's much more focus on rehabilitation and kind of reintegration back into the hive to serve the community.
So perhaps they could be tasked with like some kind of like, go and do this for the hive, and then
exactly
have reconciled.
Yeah, you get the not fun jobs.
Or maybe they don't want to be part of it anymore. Maybe they've broken out of that. Maybe they do want to sort of redeem themselves. There's all of that sort of stuff that can be explored. They've got there's a lot of information in the sidebars that I think can help people flesh out characters with these as well, so that they're more than just a collection of feats,
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Gotta say, well.
So let's get some crunch, Helen. Can we get a little bit of crunch?
Oh shoot! I was gonna do one more thing before leading into the crunch.
Let's do it.
Yeah. While we're on this page, names. I hate coming up with names, and you spent this time to really like dive in and to think about what the naming would be like with that. I just was very impressed. How did you come up with this?
So firstly, I was thinking about, well, if this is an ancestry that's ultimately kind of evolved from bees, what would that be like in terms of, I feel like their manner of speaking is going to be very different from us. So they're probably going to have names and ways of speaking that are really difficult for other ancestries to pronounce. Yeah. So there's some information around that sort of thing. In terms of the sample names, I try to lean into the theme again. If there's some sample names there around things like apius, derived from apiary, where bees kind of are kept. Polis, pollen, it's not that clever necessarily, but I think it
in there, though.
I think it's just smart enough,
Yeah.
Like it doesn't.
It's just a little nod.
There's plenty there. Okay, still very impressive though. Naming stuff, and you got it there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's roll. We got some heritages in the beginning of our feats there.
I want to see I want to see the beginning. I want to see the you might. Others probably. I want to establish the ground rules because you made a decision on their flaw that I actually think is one of the few times that I haven't really had as much of a problem with a mental flaw. Okay. For dexterity and wisdom, love that. Totally tracks. Absolutely fits right in. And the charisma flaw, I was like, why? And then I read it and I was like, that makes a lot of sense for somebody that comes from like a caste system, that the individualism has been kind of like worked out of them, and they probably are from a society that doesn't really translate to a lot of other types of things because of what they are kind of born into. So I think that particular, like a lot of people, will make, why? Because dwarves are another one that gets the charisma thing. And it makes sense. Like, they're a little bit gruff, but they're also super charming, beardy people. So why?
And they're also like incredibly devoted to family and tradition and honor and all of those types of things. So I think you can make an argument for it. But for me, it was this sort of otherness of the Thriae. They tend to be quite reclusive. They're very protective of the hive. They only have relations with other hives and kind of with other ancestries when it really suits them. They're less individualistic. They're very kind of beautiful generally. It's described in the lore that's how they are, but that can make them seem aloof, can be intimidating, it's sort of otherworldly, and that's where I really went with the ability flaw. But I mean, I know that a lot of people are going to play with the sort of 2 free boosts instead, which actually I think makes a lot of sense, and we might see more of a transition towards that in the remaster. I don't know, but for my way of thinking around this one, this made sense to me anyway.
Yeah, I think it's important to provide both options. Anyway, I mean, personally, I always do the 2 free. Yeah. And I encourage anybody that wants to at my tables to basically always choose that as the default. But you want to provide the option for the people that did, want to use some of the flaws. And I just wanted to say that I feel like you landed the potential of how to handle that one there really well, because it can be tricky to do the mental ones.
I think so.
Physicals, pretty straightforward with the physicals. Like, nobody gets bent out of shape that halfling's not as strong, right? So it can work a little bit easier for some of that. But I do think that like them getting like low light vision totally makes sense, and like in general, like not going. But you did not give them a fly speed, which I'm sure makes sense. Right, like you can't just give level 1 fly speed. Was what part of the fly question was entertained? Being able to move, up above.
Well, so flight as a mechanic in the game is rightly, kind of protected and gated at certain levels because it's such a game changer. So given that I wanted to create this ancestry that was, inherently going to be able to fly at some point. I had to think of a way to kind of deal with that. But I also, again, was just going back to the theme of bees. They're not the most kind of elegant of flyers. So I came up with feats around like bumbling flight.
Funny.
I
So
loved
you
it.
get you get it quite early, you know, level 5. But it's not full flight. Costs an action. It's only half your speed, all that sort of thing. And then it can improve later if you choose the subsequent feats.
I actually kind of love bumbling flight. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah, I think
because
it's really fun.
even if you're you know, clever and you go fleet or whatever to get that 30, or you really try to jump up there with swash, like it's basically like a pretty good jump, like at level 5, which I think is a perfect place for it to be at. And then later on when you get a little bit further with the improved flight and stuff. So it looks like we're basically approaching, like, this would be about Strix's progression, is I'm understanding it, which I think it makes sense for
That's right.
the bee people, if you will.
I use Strix as reference because I think when you're writing Ancestries, this is the first Ancestry that I've written, but I wanted to, you know, really make sure that I was in line with what was already out there. I didn't want power creep. I didn't want this to be an outlier in that sense. So I looked at Ancestries like Strix and made sure that I was in line with them, because flight is such a powerful ability. It had to be part of Thriae, but it had to be at the right levels as well. I don't know if you want to talk about some of the other feats that we've got in here. So
I'm sorry, because I got called away. I got distracted. I don't know where we were.
That's okay.
It sounded like we were talking about flights.
Well, so what I was going to say is that, you know, there's the different heritages represent the different castes within the society, you know?
I was not expecting Dancer. Where did Dancer come from?
Well, so Dancer came from the idea of, I wanted to flesh out the law again, and it was, you know, they love... If this is a kind of a little bit of an insular society, then their entertainment is going to be focused kind of on themselves and their abilities. And there's also this idea of bees in the real world doing these kind of dances and sort of flight patterns that, you know, suggest that there's an element of communication between them. Where they can they fly in a particular pattern, and it tells other bees from their colony that there's, I don't know, pasty pollen over here or whatever the case may be, you know. So it was part of that. It was part of, you know, if there are going to be relations outside of the hive, then the dancers tend to be involved in that. So I just think I was trying to think of the different roles within a colony that would be useful. So you'd have your warriors that speak for themselves, constructors with bees, that feels obvious as well. Seer was already in the lore, that they kind of this prophetic people, and then Dancer, I thought, well, you know, that really leans into the theme again, and fits the lore, I think.
So you're saying there's a lot of bee search on this?
Oh, that's very good. That's very good. Yeah.
Folks, when this goes up on YouTube, put in all your best bee puns.
Absolutely.
I think Dustin's got a head start, though. I
interrupted your thought.
Oh, sorry.
With a bad joke.
I was just going to say, I didn't want to put Queen in as a heritage. I did think about it. I went back and forth on it, but I decided against it in the end, and sort of wanted the Queen then to ultimately be a kind of a figure in the lore, but not necessarily directly playable unless you chose to do that and sort of went through some sort of journey to elevate yourself to that status. But I wanted it, it felt like that shouldn't be a heritage, but I don't know. I let people make their own minds up about that.
Yeah. No, I think that was a good call.
I think that's definitely fair. Or at least, I mean, if a GM wants to take that to the next level, right? You know, the queen that lost her hive, you know, or something to that effect, right? Like you could they could always probably take the foundation that you've built here with the original options and kind of go that direction. We slap the rare trait on it, right? You know, if they felt so compelled.
Yeah, exactly.
Brian saying noble background. Oh, that's true.
Ah,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Noble seer, like, yeah, maybe. How do new queens get selected? Is that like, or is it like a role that you're literally born into, or can you? Is that something that, like, what happens if the queen dies? Does someone get promoted? I want to know.
Yeah. So there is there's one queen per hive, as you'd expect. When a queen, I'm reading back through the log, so I forgot myself. When the queen grows old or dies, a new queen is chosen through a sacred ritual, often involving the seers. So the seers play a really important role in the society, because they act as advisors and diplomats and kind of, they're very responsible for the direction that the hive is going to go in, and so they're heavily involved in choosing the next queen then.
Makes sense.
And they get guidance, so that makes a lot of sense as people.
They get augury later as well if you go that
I love
that heritage.
I love that. That's a very appropriate. I love when a spell like that, especially for an ancestry feat, just like slots right in there, just real nice.
Yeah.
Basically exactly what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
But it does sound like Brian's idea could maybe work. You could have been a dancer, a seer, a warrior, or a constructor that was promoted to the queen. Give yourself the noble background, and then you got your story.
Brian's always figuring these things out. He's
always
very smart guy.
Facts.
Oh man. Let's start diving a little bit more into these, though. Let's see what we got.
Please.
When you were talking...
The skeleton feet, love that. Go ahead, Helen, sorry.
I gotta admit, coming into reading about bees, and I'm like, a hive mind, how are we handling it as individuals? But seeing things like hive synergy, I found, really interesting. I'm like, okay, we're seeing kind of like almost teamwork feats happening, and how, supporting the other party members. Maybe this isn't, not creepy, but it's like, okay, this is some cool stuff.
Yeah, so there's a few feats, along that line, because I wanted to represent that idea of community, teamwork. I think that's really important in this society. So hive synergy is the first one in that. Hive synergy is a reaction that allows you to give somebody a +1 circumstance bonus to their check. As you go up level, you can do it at a little bit of a further distance. So the trade-off here is that, it's essentially an automatic aid that you don't have to use an action to prepare for, which is pretty strong, but it only ever is +1. So I was trying to balance it out that way. It costs you your reaction still. It's only ever +1. So for a first level feat, that sort of scales a little bit because it gives you extra distance that you can
just
do
a
it
little
at.
bit of range. So the melee component of it too is pretty limiting. I mean, it's still solid. Like, I think it's perfectly. I think it's right. I think it's right where it needs to be. It gets the themes across really well.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to get with that one. And then there's other feats in that line that sort of help with it as well. Like coordinated assault is the sort of next one then. So you can, you can select feats that lean into the theme or whichever way you want to play. If you want to go down this route of being like a really community kind of teamwork focused character, then there's a feat line that supports that, Yeah.
By the way, for anybody that is watching today, you're about to find out how feat rich this book is, because Jamie didn't just write a lot of lore, but you get. Let me tell you, you got options at level 1, and even at 17, where some ancestries might not have any choices, you got 5. Did I count that right? 5, correct, 5. So
I think there's 40 feats or something in here, maybe.
It's a bunch.
Maybe. There's quite a lot.
I'm not going to
Maybe there's
scroll
too
and lose
many.
it right
Maybe
now.
I went overboard.
What have you guys
No.
found?
Like I said at the start, I really like bees. So
No, I think each one of them, that's what I was going to say, though, is that each one of them feels really essential. Like, first of all, I don't know if this was at all inspired by Dem when in Team Plus plays Pathfinder, or I guess New Orcs on the Block, whichever the show, the pre or the post show name. Dem at one point in that campaign as a druid attempted to communicate with insects. And so I love that the bees can get the ability to communicate, particularly with insects. You know, like ants and bees. Like that makes a lot of sense. Like they'd probably be able to. Like, what was your day like today with the hive?
It was a good day. What's going on? Can you do this? Yep.
Exactly. They've got this relationship with the world around them. Really, they've got a few feats that sort of lean into that, like. Pollinator's Grace is another one. You know, it's sort of. I wanted the names to be evocative of the theme, but also have an interesting mechanic as well. That one allows you to move through difficult terrain created by undergrowth. That really felt appropriate to me for a bee, when you see the way that they kind of, you know, are obviously darting around flowers and that sort of thing. Communication with insects is another one that it made. There's a logical sense to it that also fits the theme. That's the thing. I didn't want anything to be there that didn't need to be there, that didn't entirely fit, both from a kind of story and theme perspective, a mechanic perspective, and also like thinking about these people as, you know, as real as we can think about them, right? So there's one feat in here which is Stinger Anchor, and I was thinking, well, every bee is going to have a stinger. Some of them are going to be more able to wield it as a weapon than others, if you're a warrior, if you take certain feats. But I feel like that's going to be such an inherent part of you that there should be options for it to have utility.
Yes.
Regardless of whether you're going to use it in combat or not. So there's things like that as well that I really like that one. That's an interesting one, I thought, anyway.
Yeah, just dig in and you're going to use it.
They're all great.
This was so fun. Stinger Anchor. You know, just plunge it in and you're immovable, kind of. You know, or at least it's very hard.
Yeah.
You're right. Everything feels like it has a place. Everything makes sense, and you built around. You had 4 different heritages to build around, so there's choice for everybody for how they want to express themselves within their bee culture.
But I also want it to be a difficult choice as well.
It is
like
difficult.
I want to produce, I want to provide a lot of different options for people that are, you know, all fun. And so it's a really tough choice which route you go down.
You're mean.
Yeah,
I know.
I think you succeeded, because it's like one of those things where it's like they all feel so like, even the line that does Merope, Helen, you were trying to educate us on the
I was leaning towards Merope, but you know, I'm not sure I'm right either, you know.
Like, this is a game that I would feel like if I didn't have Ancestral Paragon, I'd feel sad. You know, like I need to get more feats to take these options, especially like Pollen Rush and Pollinator's Grace. Like Pollinator's Grace, first of all, that name is fire, but even Pollen Rush, like the concealed aspect of it is like, yes, like it just adds a layer of play that isn't there for so many different things. Yeah. And it feels so at home on this Ancestry, so.
That's cool, thank you. I wanted to challenge myself where I was like, okay, if I'm going to do 4 heritages, could a table theoretically have 4 Thriae characters, 1 for each heritage, representing their hive, their colony on whatever adventures that they're going on, and be built in very different ways and feel very different, even though they belong to the same ancestry. And I thought, well, if I've managed that, then that's kind of that's the success criteria, if you like, for the design of this. I wanted each thing to be distinct. I wanted it to be a hard choice which one you picked. I didn't want any kind of wasted feats, but equally nothing that was outlandish in terms of power. So there's a lot of different things to balance with writing an ancestry, and I learned a lot from writing this one because of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're even so. I guess I find that and Helen, you can probably speak to this too, but I find that when I'm writing for material, that I end up learning every single time, right?
Oh my goodness,
that
yeah.
like every time you're just like, especially about the structure of the game and things that you can do, because you've got the the greatest hits, right? Like I mean, you've got the weapon expertise, like which is pretty important for classes to really function. Like I did like the the armor feat at level 1 as well, but then later on, you're definitely leaning into the individual like heritages that you can choose and trying to like bring out those initial investments. Like swarm summoner is really cool. Like I like that you can just make an animal swarm like as a bee person. Like that makes a lot of that's really cool. Like it would be one of those things where I would start looking up swarms right after I read the feat to see like, all right, well, which friends are gonna help? Like like that would be like page 1.
Yeah. I thought there was like, okay, swarms needs to be part of this. I think that idea of being able to move around in a natural environment and be able to interact with the natural environment in a way that made sense, that was part of it as well. Then the individual themes of the heritages, so the seer should have a whole bunch of stuff around prophecy and sort of information from an otherworldly source. Warrior should be good at warrior stuff. Dancer, there's a level 17 feat I really like for dancer, which is swarming dance. They perform this dance that sort of covers themselves in a swarm of bees, and then if somebody attacks you, then they get stung.
Yeah.
As they should.
That's right.
Back it up. That is the dancer concept is specifically, as Helen mentioned earlier, it's really cool to see it get to kind of like live here, with I guess within the concept of an ancestry that has a lower charisma, probably, if they're not using the bonuses, right? So it is still cool to see like that almost technical aspect of the dance being applied to these feats in a way, instead of the the from the heart or the emotional aspect of it. Really cool.
Exactly. There's a lot, like I say, there's 40 feats or something, so I'm sure that there is something for everybody, so long as it's a theme that interests you to begin with.
Absolutely.
It's really hard to I can't imagine how to even cover all this. And then sprinkled, and I know you already talked about this, but we keep, even amid the feats, still seeing these sidebars. We saw some of them earlier, but you're still seeing some of them here, talking about, you got your entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff in these early ones too. So jam-packed with information.
Yeah, there's again, I just wanted to keep going back to, if this is going to be an ancestry in your game, in your world, then it needs a place and it needs a sort of rich lore that'll support that. So there's a little sidebar about the fact that there's a once a year blossom ball. There's this big event that different colonies come together to sort of celebrate the seasons and enjoy dances from each other's colonies and that sort of thing. So there's the ways that they interact with the world around them, both mechanically and in the lore as well. So I enjoyed writing the sidebars. I enjoy writing lore as much as mechanics, probably. And going back to what we were talking about in NPC Firebrands, you can use as much or as little of that as you want.
And it's really easy to do that when there's so much to choose from. Like, you can fill out a lot of different options here. Like, I mean, it's pretty value. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, this is a great take on the ancestry with a lot of different options. Each one feels really rich. And it looks like Foundry might be on the way in the future as well.
Foundry is done. This is
Ooh.
again. So Paul has done his part. This is all on me now to just like update the layout and get the links in there. So Foundry's been done for a few days, but I've been
Depriving
working.
people of Foundry. You are bold.
I know, but I've been working on another product that's just launched today, and that's really taken up a lot of my time over the last few days. So it's on my list to do this weekend. This PDF will be updated with the Foundry, and that's not going to be any additional cost. So with this, you'll get all of the content, all of the feats, Path Builder integration, and Foundry, all in the cost.
Very nice.
Was that a? You just buried the lead there, right? I heard new product. Helen, did you hear new product?
I think I heard new product.
So there's been this amazing event going on in the community over the last couple of weeks. Shout out to Charlie who had this initial idea of a game jam, which, if you're not familiar, is basically just a bunch of creators coming together to create products around a particular theme. That theme being summer in this case. So my latest product, the one that went out today, is another Beyond product. It's called Beyond Archetypes Summer. There's 3 archetypes in there that really try and lean into the theme of summer. So there's a Solar Adept, a Rose Warden, and a Lifeguard. The Lifeguard is one of my favorite things I've written. I think it's really fun.
Lifeguard, I love that.
I think it has a place in a fantasy setting where, it's not just fulfilling the role of a lifeguard that you would typically expect around like bodies of water, but also, somebody who protects people in an aquatic environment. So it sort of goes a little bit further than just Baywatch. Although there is a feat in there that is specifically a nod to Baywatch, so I'll just leave that there as an Easter egg.
I'm gonna have to dig for that one. That sounds fun. I already bought the book, but I'll have to find.
Yeah, I feel like you'll know it when you see it. It's good fun.
I hope so.
So that's gone out today. In terms of other stuff that I'm working on, a whole bunch of things really. There's another NPC Index book on the way, which is going to be monstrous templates. So a while ago I did undead templates. So Paul's been working on monstrous, so you could take any of the NPCs from the NPC Index line and add on a template to make them a giant or I don't know. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things in there. A giant, an Azer, what else is there? Yeah, a whole load of stuff. So that's coming. What else am I working on? Something for Rage of Elements that I can't talk about at the moment.
Aren't we all?
The remaster is interesting. That's going to create, a bunch of kind of. It's going to create an opportunity for me to go back to the NPC Index and refresh stuff based on whatever is released as part of the remaster, and probably finish off the whole line with the other classes as well. I've been tinkering away at that, and some of the NPCs in the Firebrands book are sort of initial thoughts on how I might do NPCs for a gunslinger, for example. So there'll be an NPC Index book that'll include gunslingers and swashbucklers and the other classes that I haven't covered. More ancestry stuff. I've got another outline for an ancestry that I'm working on. So the way that I tend to work is I have a lot of ideas and then waste a lot of time not working on any of them at any given moment.
Helen, what rank did you say Jamie was?
Jamie is the 6th most prolific author on Pathfinder Infinite right now, so I don't think you waste that much time.
I was going to say,
it's very kind of you.
The lie detector determined that was a lie. But we do appreciate you releasing so much great content on PFI, like the NPC Index line. Like you and Paul really do a great job. And it's exciting to see you all kind of branching into the player space a little bit more now, like since Smoke and Sales, and your individual. So I'm excited to see you. You've kind of been batting around the player options for a while, I suppose, but it is nice to see the Beyond line, happen. And I'm really interested to see where it goes, especially since you got one ancestry down, and then you got some archetypes. So
Yeah.
question mark on what's next. Sounds like it's going to be pretty spicy.
Hope so. Yeah, something interesting for Rage of Elements, I think. I think that'll be good.
August and September is going to be real fun, I think, on Infinite.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everybody's bringing it on Infinite. Seriously, the game jam was such a good idea. There's so much collaboration and exchange of ideas with that. And, you know, I see lots of new faces in the different Discords that I'm in, loads of people engaging. I think it's in a very healthy place at the moment, and I'm excited to see what people put out. I'm always inspired when I see new products coming out, you know. I just think there's so many creative people and such good ideas out there. So, let's just keep lifting each other up, I think.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end us. I think, you know, we're really proud of the community and seeing, you know, Jam Finder like come together. Like, honestly, some of the stuff that you all managed to put together was really impressive. I know someone had their first release, Autumn, who's in chat.
Yes, shout out to all of those. Amazing.
Yeah,
beautiful cover.
Yes, it's lovely. Actually, so, you know, again, speaking of Jam Finder, what we're going to do, we're going to do some smaller ones instead of, you know, just the bigger interviews. I'm going to take some time and talk with some folks and do some smaller things. So keep an eye on the channel. They'll be a little bit more aperiodic instead of Thursdays, because it was just so fun to see what people came together with. So Stay tuned. We're going to hear more.
Good. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on, guys.
Oh, sorry.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming, Jamie. It was absolutely a pleasure. We obviously will probably have you back since you're one of the most prolific authors.
I'd love to come back.
We hope you do. So thanks to everybody for listening. Do not forget to check out NPC Index Firebrands and Thriae and the new Jam Finder titles that are hitting PFI over the next week and today. So
all right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we are Infinite Insiders out.
Out.